Another big takeaway from Prime Minister Modi's bilateral meeting, he says that there has to be peace and stability post the disengagement on the border as the baseline for negotiations. Affirming the thaw in the ties, Chinese President Xi Jinping says India and China are friends and should be not treated as rivals. Prime Minister Modi meets Senior General of Myanmar on the sidelines of the SCO Summit, first high-level meeting with a top Myanmar official. Series of bilateral meetings on the schedule of Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines. PM Modi set to meet President Putin tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting fresh visuals coming in from the SCO Summit as the reception is now on and all the leaders are coming and assembling where Chinese President Xi Jinping is going to welcome all of them together. And just moments from now, we'll also get the official visuals coming in of Prime Minister Narendra Modi being welcomed by the Chinese President, who will be hosted for an official reception. It was also a similar reception that we saw during the Kazan BRICS Summit, where President Putin had welcomed the Chinese President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and all three of them shared a very cordial dinner later on. We are expecting similar visuals coming in today. But ladies and gentlemen, in just moments from now, it's about 7 p.m. In Tianjin time, and we are getting the first visuals. But before that, let me take you one step back and show you what happened earlier this morning with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping's bilateral. Here is what the Prime Minister said that set the tone for the entire conversation with China earlier today.
Excellency, हमारे प्यारे दोस्तों के स्वागत के लिए मैं आपका हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। पिछले वर्ष कजान में हमारी बहुत ही सार्थक चर्चा हुई थी। हमारे संबंधों को एक सकारात्मक दिशा मिली। सीमा पर डिसएंगेजमेंट के बाद शांति और स्थिरता का माहौल बना हुआ है। हमारे स्पेशल
And ladies and gentlemen, as promised, these are live visuals coming in from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's official venue in Tianjin, where President Xi Jinping is welcoming all the leaders. In attendance are 10 member states and all of their leaders. Along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russia's President Putin, we'll also see Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian, Pakistan's Shehbaz Sharif, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, Kyrgyzstan President Sadir Japarov, and Tajik President Emomali Rahmon. All of them, one after the other, being welcomed there by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Along with the member nations, there will also be a lot of observer nations who are in attendance, including Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Myanmar's military chief Min Aung Hlaing, Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, Indonesian President Subianto, Malaysian Prime Minister Ibrahim, and Maldivian President Muhammad Muizzu. So all of these top dignitaries and world leaders there being welcomed one after the other by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Remember, the SCO, which was initially formed in the year 1996 as a security bloc, was initially known as the Shanghai Five, which was formed by China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, the original founding members, to settle the border disputes following the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, subsequently in 2001, the group evolved into what we see as the Shanghai Cooperative Organization today, which includes Uzbekistan and is headquartered in Beijing. Now, in 2017 is when India officially joined as a member of the SCO. When it expanded in 2023, the SCO also welcomed Iran. In 2024, Belarus joined as a full-time member, and just earlier today, we also brought you breaking news updates where officially the Chinese parties have now decided, the Chinese delegation has decided to induct Azerbaijan also, or in fact have in principle greenlit a possible membership for Azerbaijan to the SCO. These are top dignitaries arriving one after the other at the official reception. In any moment now, we'll also see visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi also being received. At the same time, President Putin. These are the visuals coming in, and also joining me live on the broadcast is Ambassador Suresh Goyal, who is joining me in analyzing the pictures as they come in from Tianjin. And that's the family photo of the SCO, the first visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the full family of the SCO, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, there front and center. And he is right there in the front row, as ladies and gentlemen, you can see. And this is the full family picture with various leaders in the frame. Russia's President Vladimir Putin, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. We have Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, Kazakhstan's President Kasim Jomart Tokayev also there, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, KP Sharma Oli, now the Nepalese Prime Minister, also being received there by Chinese President and his wife, and both of them welcoming the Nepalese Prime Minister there along with that. So all the top dignitaries arriving one after the other alongside all the founding members. There are 14 key dialogue partners. Let me quickly go to Ambassador Suresh Goyal as well, who is also analyzing these pictures as they come in. Ambassador, today we see a massive show of strength in the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. Almost 40% of the Earth's landmass, 25% of its GDP, standing there in that family photo in Tianjin, the third largest city in China. What are the optics and what is the West watching today? Ambassador Goyal, if you can decode it for us.
Well, absolutely. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, when it started in 2001 with 5 members, and of course, as you mentioned, starting from Shanghai 5 as the basis of further expansion, it has come a long way, really. And today, it is truly a Eurasian organization comprising many members from the Asian subcontinental mass and from countries from Europe. In that sense, the one thought that comes to mind really is that China does appear to be coming out as the alternate leader of the world, our alternate to the USA, which has basically been exercising the so-called superpower, the role of a superpower and the one power in the world, one global power. So China is emerging at the head of SCO and then earlier as a member of BRICS as the one superpower to contest the USA role in the world. And truly speaking, in that sense, really what China has been doing, it really is telling the USA that the world has changed. That is how it appears, really. So, amazing. It's really very, very impressive, that kind of a show to be put up by China in Tianjin.
Indeed, Ambassador Goyal, and these are visuals also coming in as we analyze this. And it is a strong message also going to the West there. President Trump, conspicuously silent, perhaps he'll be waking up anytime soon and we'll be hearing his 2 cents also on the SCO meeting that we see on our screens there. But one after the other, top leaders of the SCO there arriving. And in just moments from now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll also have the shots there. I would also continue to talk to Ambassador Goyal, who remains with us. Ambassador Goyal, there has been a tremendous amount of conversation about the revival of the Troika. And it was kicked off, in fact, by the Foreign Minister of Russia, that is Sergei Lavrov, last month, who signaled that there is a potential of revival between a trilateral partnership of Russia, India and China, something that was talked a lot about in the early 90s, but since then has been in the back gear, particularly because of concerns over the boundary question. Now today, we saw that Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his address also acknowledged that there have been 2 special rounds of representative level talks. And everybody is talking about normalization. Do you see that the visuals we will see, of course, all 3 of them sitting together in some moments from now, but do you see diplomatically it actually converting into anything meaningful?
See, you mentioned that the idea of this trilateral platform, RIC, Russia, India, China, started in the early 90s. I still remember the time when the ideas were, or the initiative was taken by Russia at that time. It was immediately after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and Russia was basically looking at really having weakened considerably, both politically and economically. The idea was that a platform together with India and China would give it the kind of strength that it needed to become a viable force against the USA. Today, it is said that again, basically because of the emerging USA as a huge power, and Russia does want to draw on the strength of China and India to provide that kind of the platform. But I noticed that China also has not been very articulate about this trilateral cooperation. They have reacted in a kind of a very formal manner, but without indicating any great enthusiasm in terms of carrying on the idea. My sense is that in the world where there already are several such platforms, you have BRICS, you have G20, you have SCO, you have so many such organizations basically emerging of global south really. Whether RIC would carry any further, any significant leverage
Yes.
in the world affairs or not. So we have to wait and see how it goes on.
Indeed, and joining us also live on the broadcast, Ambassador Goel, is a very well-known geostrategic analyst, Mr. Brahma Chalani. And Mr. Chalani, I would also like to come to you first, as we just saw Erdogan there also meeting President Xi Jinping, and we are seeing all the visuals of the dignitaries as they arrive one after the other for the official reception. And just moments from now, we'll also see President Putin arriving. We also saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi there. Mr. Chalani, coming to you first, how do you see the optics today? Just 2 weeks ago, we were all talking about a very Western-led global understanding vis-a-vis the Alaska Summit, and then subsequently the Washington huddle that all the European allies had. Today, you have almost all the big powers of Asia coming together at the third largest city of China. Power play or optics, sir? Your take on this?
The SCO meeting, as well as the meeting of world's leading strongmen on Wednesday, when China holds a Victory Day celebration, a military parade. It'll be a big show of Chinese military might on Wednesday. That bigger assembly of world leaders, especially who's who list of the world's autocrats. These two meetings, parallel meetings, SCO and then the Wednesday military parade in Beijing, clearly suggest that the world actually might split in two blocks. The West on one side and the rest on the other side. Or the split could be between the autocrats on one side and the rest of the world on the other side. And if either split happens, it'll make the position of India, a neutral country, more difficult, more challenging, because any kind of fracturing of the world along geopolitical lines will make the task of neutral and non-aligned countries more difficult, because then you have to choose a side, or you have to manage both the camps. So for India, any kind of fracturing along geopolitical and economic lines would certainly not be good news. But I think what we are seeing, though, is that at least in the Alaska meeting, Trump recognized, ironically, that US policy has pushed Russia closer to China. So in order to break this axis against the US, he is seeking to woo Putin. And wooing Putin also involves ending the Ukraine war, because without ending the Ukraine war, the US cannot peel Russia away from China. Ironically, at the same time, Trump is also doing the opposite. He's making the very mistake that he's trying to correct in relation to Russia, which is that he's pushing India to mend ties with China. So it's very ironical that he's doing. In fact, there's a double irony, because Trump in his first term gave India pride of place in his Indo-Pacific strategy. He clearly laid out that India is very important for American policy as a counterbalancer to China. But today, he's treating India more harshly than China. This is a jarring paradox. that China is being treated with kids' gloves while the weight of his tariffs and sanctions has fallen on India.
Indeed, and right when you were speaking, Mr. Sharani, we also are looking at visuals of the official family photo there, and President Xi Jinping flanked on his right side with President Putin, and who seems a lot more comfortable and more at home, one would say. A 5-day-long visit. He's going to be there on the Wednesday date as well that you mentioned, when there's going to be that mega military parade that China is putting on for its might, celebrating its victory in World War II. And one of other President Trump's friends, Kim Jong-un, is also expected to be there. As you were pointing out, the so-called autocrats of the entire world are uniting. But it's not just a statement that when 10 leaders of the SCO all happen to make the time and come. In India, in fact, also sharing that photograph with China just months after Operation Sindoor. Something has changed globally, because earlier this year we also saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi going for the G7 summit as a special invitee to Canada. And today we see at SCO Prime Minister Narendra Modi again in the front row there, sharing a cordial handshake with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The optics of this are certainly being noticed all around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, those are visuals from just moments ago when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received at the official SCO reception. In moments from now, we'll also get visuals from inside, but now we can confirm that all the world leaders have indeed arrived at the SCO reception and officially have been received by Chinese President Xi Jinping there. That was Prime Minister Narendra Modi just a few moments ago. On the broadcast, continuing to be with us is Ambassador Goel and Mr. Brahmacharani. Mr. Ambassador Goel, I would like to come to you very briefly on this. Mr. Charani was pointing out a lot of significant points there in terms of the optics and how this relationship altogether is going to impact. But the biggest billion-dollar question is, right now there are going to be a lot more backdoor negotiations that we do not see on the reception front. And we see that SCO has been a point of contention vis-a-vis the declaration, and all eyes will be on the joint declaration coming tomorrow. Being a seasoned diplomat yourself, sir, do you find that historically India has held a position on cross-border terrorism at the SCO, and we saw this year as well Defense Minister Rajnath Singh walk out of the defense ministers meeting without a joint declaration because there were certain red lines that Pakistan was not willing to concede in the joint declaration. Now we have Shehbaz Sharif as well in this meeting, and we have the Chinese president there hosting this. For the Chinese, it was a massive victory lap when they got to know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be attending. Well, they have him there, but will they have a joint declaration is the question everybody's asking, sir. Ambassador Goel, your thoughts on that?
Yes. One or two points really here. First of all, when Minister Rajnath Singh refused to sign the declaration, not to include Pahalgam into the declaration, I'm not quite certain whether it was entirely just the work of Pakistan and it could happen without Chinese support. I think we need to be very, very clear in this matter that with the kind of political relationship between Pakistan and China, and Pakistan acting as the hub of international terrorism, at least in the region, and even internationally, who can forget Osama bin Laden hiding in near Rawalpindi? Who can forget that really? And having to be extracted by the American SEAL operation. The point really here is, could Pakistan be acting in that manner without support or without encouragement or without countries like China and the USA looking the other way for the time being? I don't think so, and therefore if the declaration could not be adopted last time, I don't think it would be entirely just with Pakistan saying no to it. China must have really supported it in that manner, even though nothing is out. In today's declaration also, I'm quite certain that there will be a paragraph on anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism cooperation. After all, SCO was formed for counter-terrorism cooperation. But I don't think that it is going to be a direct or sharp kind of a statement. It is going to be pro forma. It has to be done. But nothing really that would give us any great deal of satisfaction, knowing that what we are suffering from Pakistan, China is not going to really do that. That is number one. Number two, as far as the multilateral cooperation or the organization's work is concerned, have you ever thought that the official languages of Shanghai Cooperation Organization are Russian and Chinese, which clearly indicates its centrality for Russia and China. And the other countries are there basically around them. Even today's photograph, you have Putin standing with China, while the other countries, I do not know what particular order they fix for them to stand there in that photograph. Therefore, let us face it. Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an organization being used by both China and Russia for their own strategic objectives, strategic promotions, particularly China to assert its global leadership. And in that, we are there at the moment because we came in, we were interested in counter-terrorism kind of work. We wanted to have a foot in Central Asia, is our, right next to, is our region, really next door region. And therefore, we had to be there in terms of protecting our own interest. But we need to be very, very careful. We need to be very, very assertive in making sure that we have a role in the whole thing. Last thing, curiously, 3rd September, the military parade takes place. India will not be there, but I think certain countries forget that the Chinese victory in Second World War was engineered by the Indian people.
Indeed, Ambassador Goel,
Yes.
very interesting point there. And I would just briefly like to also go to Mr. Brahma Chalani, who is also on the broadcast there. Ambassador Goel was very eloquently explaining us, Mr. Chalani, there about how this entire thing could eventually culminate into a diplomatically worded statement on cross-border terrorism. You, for one, have been always pragmatic on the India-China equation than optimistic. I would ask you, what do we gain out of attending the SCO Summit? Because clearly President Xi wanted a picture, and he has had that. We just saw that a few moments ago. But the world is watching, and on the deliverable front, when we talk about thaw in the ties and normalization of the ties and border question largely remaining unchanged since the last 75 years, what are we looking at vis-a-vis the tariff situation also ongoing, that India and China stand to gain from this? Or do you think that this is not going to have much of the impact, more optics than, words?
In recent years, India has been downgrading the SCO's importance in its own foreign policy. Last year, Prime Minister Modi skipped the SCO Summit in Astana, Kazakhstan. And year before last, India was the rotating head of the SCO, yet Modi downgraded the SCO Summit to a virtual format. That summit was held online, not in person, and it ended very quickly because all that happened in that online summit was for different leaders to read out statements. So after having signaled that the SCO carries diminishing returns for India, this year's attendance in person by Modi was striking, and certainly there were larger geopolitical factors at play that led to Modi deciding to attend the SCO Summit in person. On the issue of counterterrorism figuring in the declaration, we in India get carried away by the process. We don't focus on the outcomes. We are more concerned and more interested in the process. And that's the reason why in the India-China border negotiations, China has managed to take India round and round the mulberry bush for more than 4 decades. The India-China border negotiations began in 1981 when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. These negotiations have been continuing for so many years. These are the longest running border negotiations between any two countries in modern history. But every now and then, the nomenclature is changed or new groups are formed to give the impression that a new impetus is being given to these negotiations. And yet the Indian media, the Indian analysts all highlight this as an important sign of progress. Process is not progress. And yet we focus on process, and same thing about declarations. Now imagine if the declaration even had wording to our liking on counterterrorism? Will that result in China not shielding Pakistan's terrorism against India? Will China then stop protecting Pakistan in the UN by blocking the designation of Pakistan-based entities and individuals as terrorists? We just saw recently in May, during Operation Sindoor, that Pakistan received real-time intelligence, radar, and satellite reconnaissance inputs from China. China was a third party in the India-Pakistan conflict. So let's not talk about what the declaration might say on counterterrorism, because words don't matter. What matters is action.
Indeed, sir, and we are closely going to look at what the actions can be, but at the moment those actions are warm handshakes and a smile on the face as the SCO family assembles once again. There are 20 world leaders on that stage today, ladies and gentlemen, 10 members, founding members, and the 10 member nations of the SCO, along with other 10 top dignitaries who have been specially invited to attend the SCO. Just to give you the stats on what you're looking at in that picture, there is all representatives from at least 3.46 billion population of the planet. That is almost 42% of the world's population being represented on that stage today, with almost $24.4 trillion of economy in purchasing power parity terms combined, along with nearly 25% of the world's entire economic power standing there on one stage, and that stage happens to be in Tianjin, China. Those are latest visuals coming in, ladies and gentlemen. In moments from now, we'll also get visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi inside the venue, and hopefully we will also see more visuals coming in at the same time of President Putin also meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi there from inside. But those are initial visuals coming in from the SCO venue, ladies and gentlemen, as we are non-stop live, and these are fresh visuals coming in. Just moments ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received, and this is an official banquet that will be hosted by the Chinese president there for all the member nations who are in attendance. And along with that, in just a few moments from now, we'll also see all the cultural activities that will be planned inside alongside the state banquet. Last year, these pictures made international headlines, but the venue was different. It was Kazan, and the summit was BRICS. This time, it is the regional summit, the SCO, which is now having a full-blown show of strength. Just a few weeks ago, Niranjan, we saw President Putin there, all smiles alongside President Trump. And today we see him standing right next to Chinese President Xi Jinping in that massive SCO family photo. In the front row, center is President Putin, and in the front row we also see Prime Minister Narendra Modi towards stage left.
In fact, China and Russia are the two big headlines in this summit. That's how China has positioned it. We are there. It's Prime Minister's first visit to China in 7 years. I think the optics have been there for everyone. Everyone's looking at the headlines coming out. Many asking, is it any different except for the tariff that has now been imposed by Trump, forcing India to look beyond the traditional Western bloc for open markets? Has anything else changed in terms of the language? We'll take a break, come back, and we have Brahma Chalari, one of the finest voices on strategic affairs. He continues to be with us along with our panel of experts. We will get you Tianjin live on the other side. Stay tuned.
Here, we didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%, I think.
ट्रम्प से बात हमेशा विश्लेषण करता आया, सीखता आया कि वे राष्ट्रहित के सर्वोपरि रखकर के काम करते हैं।
Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic. We have been in frequent contact with our allies, and we are marshaling the full power
During an interview, American economist Richard Wolff called out the US administration for attacking India with tariffs and shooting itself in the foot by doing so. Wolff said that India is central for trade and that it will find other places to sell its exports if the US gets shut off. Wolff said that India is now, according to the United Nations, the largest country on earth. The United States telling India what to do is like a mouse hitting his fist to an elephant. India will find other places to sell its exports if the US is shut off to India, and the move will only strengthen the BRICS nations. But like Russia found another place to sell its energy, India will sell its exports no longer to the United States but to the rest of the BRICS. India has a long-standing relationship with the US since the Soviet era, and you are playing with a very different adversary. But for those with some humor, it will be the spectacle of the United States acting like it's the world's tough guy, as what it actually does is shoot itself in the foot. On August 27, Trump's 50% tariff imposition took effect on many Indian products. The tariffs are meant to punish New Delhi for buying Russian oil. Trump has raised pressure on India over the energy transactions, a key source of revenue for Moscow's war in Ukraine, as part of a campaign to end the conflict. New Delhi has criticized Washington's move as unfair, unjustified, and
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, going back to those live pictures coming in of the SCO dinner. This is the formal dinner, and tomorrow is when the SCO will formally convene. Kritat, if you can quickly tell our viewers what we can expect in the next 24 hours. Tomorrow is very critical for our Prime Minister. He meets Putin.
Indeed.
That's the decisive one.
Yeah, it's about at 7:30 a.m. in the morning is when the Leaders Summit is expected to start, and we'll be hearing in from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's initial remarks at the SCO Summit tomorrow morning, following which at around 9:30 a.m. IST we're expecting Prime Minister Modi to hold his official bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. By noon he should be up in wheels, Niranjan, so it's going to be a very tight morning tomorrow morning, and Republic will be reporting live and breaking.
Yes. Okay, so as we stay with these pictures, that's the Prime Minister being greeted by Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, and his wife. You had Vladimir Putin as well. Putin standing right next to Xi Jinping, and that is symbolic, tells you the full story of the SCO Summit. Going across to Brahma Chalani continues to stay with us. Okay. And before I go across to our panelists, Ambassador Suresh Goyal is with us, and before I go across to the Ambassador, just telling our viewers that tomorrow around 9:45 is when our Prime Minister is expected to meet Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. Is that correct, Kritat?
Yes, Niranjan, that's about 9:45 a.m. Tomorrow morning. About 9:45 to 10:30 hours is the window, about 45 minutes of bilateral meeting time between India and Russia. This is going to be a very important bilateral meeting, in fact, because President Putin is also set to visit to India in the month of November and December. That's the target window that we're looking at. Just a couple of weeks ago, when NSA Ajit Doval was present in Moscow, it was in fact confirmed over a call with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So these are important, a very important trend-setting bilateral meeting. And the importance of this bilateral meeting is also evident from the fact that yesterday, President Zelensky, in fact, called Prime Minister Narendra Modi to brief him about the conversations that were held in Alaska and subsequently in Washington. And he also attempted to persuade Prime Minister Narendra Modi to perhaps act as an interlocutor and send away a positive message towards Russia, what Ukraine's concerns are also. Because largely in the last 2 weeks since the Alaska summit, we have seen massive silence. President Trump initially came out quite bullish on a possible trilateral meeting that he can force onto the table with Ukrainian President Zelensky and Putin both on side of him. But so far he has had no success. And who knows, even India could emerge as a very significant player to act as an interlocutor between these two parties.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the Nobel Peace Committee, comprising 5 members, 3 of whom are against giving it to Trump this year. What a shame that would be, right? I mean, I think he knows that already. But anyway, we're getting in more pictures now of the Prime Minister Modi meeting the President of Maldives, Muiz, on the sidelines of SCO Summit in Tianjin. The Prime Minister has tweeted out a picture of him meeting the Maldivian President. Also, by the way, they share a very, very special relationship with China as well. So Maldives becomes very critical and has always been critical for China. They've tried their best to woo them. But the bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi and Muiz recently, when our Prime Minister got a warm welcome there, things have changed between India and Maldives than what they were in the last 2 years. He met him on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. I think any minute now we'll have that picture of our Prime Minister meeting the Maldivian President. And the Prime Minister has tweeted saying that India's development cooperation with Maldives is greatly beneficial for our people. And another picture that's just come into our newsrooms is that of our Prime Minister meeting. Okay, let's put the Maldives picture of Prime Minister Modi with Maldives. That's with Muiz, and that's on the sidelines of the SCO dinner that's happening. And the Prime Minister meeting the Nepalese Prime Minister, his Nepal counterpart KP Oli in Tianjin. Very interesting also because Nepal, we are hearing, has officially raised its disapproval of India and China talking about our trade via the land route in Lippo Lake. They're not happy about that. There are reports that they've raised it with Xi Jinping. Not sure what the Chinese response would have been. But Ambassador Goel, very interesting, both Maldives and Nepal, at some point in the recent past, both traditionally share a good relation. But in the recent past, we've had a little bit of a frosty relation with both countries, but yet ironed out quickly.
You are absolutely right that the relationship became rather frosty between India and these two countries. Not really just last year, but I think several years ago. And I would attribute that to really a simple, not simple, but a natural tendency on part of our neighbors to hedge between the two big neighbors. Nepal has China to the north and India to the south. And Nepal, ever since it became a democracy and the monarchy was thrown away, monarchy was the great bond between India and Nepal, incidentally, because of the factor of Hinduism. And the Nepalese monk was the head of the Hinduism in Nepal, really, in that sense. So ever since it became a democracy, there has been a tendency amongst the leftist parties in Nepal to really look to China as a balance to India, and that has played out in their foreign policy with India. But at the same time, given the topology, given the geography of Nepal, Tarai being host to a major Indian demography, really, I don't think Nepal can completely ignore Indian sensitivities or Indian concerns in the relationship, as has been evident recently. Therefore, when you mention Lippo Lake Pass, it will remain a concern, but I don't think it is going to go beyond really just being a talking point. Yeah. Maldives, on the other hand, is a more important issue. Maldives plays a great role in the Indian Ocean. Maldives is a part of the Colombo Security Cooperation Platform, and Maldives has been actively wooed by China for its own Indian Ocean security links platform. And therefore, in the case of Maldives, when our relationship really again swings back to India, I would call that a matter of great satisfaction for us, because anything that happens in Maldives begins to impact on our own maritime security immediately. So on the balance, at this present time, I would say Maldives is a matter of satisfaction for us. Nepal, we have to keep a watch and be sensitive to what Nepal's concerns are and how to deal with Nepal. But Lippo Lake will really remain more or less a talking point rather than becoming a serious issue between India and Nepal.
Yeah, and look at, when you look at that picture, Ambassador Goel, when there is this group photograph of the SCO family, so to say. These are, by the way, pictures of the Prime Minister meeting the Maldivian President Muiz and then KP Oli of Nepal and the Egyptian Prime Minister. And when you look at that, if I have the family photo, the SCO so-called family photo, and when you see that photo closely, right, Ambassador Goel and Kritat, and you look at that photo, very interesting, because how things change, like they say in diplomacy, and Ambassador Goel wouldn't agree more, that there are no permanent friends or enemies. Now, that's the observation, right, on international diplomacy. No permanent friends or enemies. Alliances, rivalries can shift in a second. And that picture, when you look at that, to the Prime Minister's right, are leaders of two countries, Azerbaijan and Turkey. right? There's Erdogan to the Prime Minister's right, yeah? And look at the kind of relationship that we've shared, both with China and then Turkey. Of course, I'm not even talking about Pakistan because there can't be a relation there, but talking more about Turkey and China, so much has changed, isn't it, Ambassador, in the last 2 weeks? Because I came across some headlines of even us thinking twice about those Turkish projects, because there was a view after Operation Sindoor, but apparently hearing now that we are reviewing all of those decisions once again with Turkey, hinting at some sort of a pause, if not a thaw, and then you have things that have changed for the better with China.
Yes, I noticed that you have been rather careful and rather hesitant in describing the Turkey-China dynamics at the SCO.
Yes.
The fact is that Turkey looks at itself as the empire, the medieval times empire of Ottoman Empire in the region, and Turkey continues to look at Central Asia as their backyard. And same region is now being cultivated by China and Russia. Of course, that used to be part of Russia before 1991. And now China and Russia are working together with the Central Asian as a kind of a Eurasian paradigm. I do not know whether this will remain always like what it is now, Turkey looking at it very in a benign manner, because Turkey's ambitions have not changed. Please do remember that when Turkey plays a role in Azerbaijan, Armenia, when Turkey plays a role in the area when Turkey begins to support Pakistan against India, it's his own ambition in Central Asia which is coming to play. And therefore, I don't think that, and I think it's only a matter of time when Turkey really begins to show those ambitions once again in the region. And those ambitions are going to again impact on the work of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It is just my very preliminary reading, but something which troubles me a bit, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's a picture of the Prime Minister meeting Lukashenko. He's also tweeted about his meeting. The Prime Minister saying, we'll go back to the picture. Okay, that's Lukashenko, Alexander Lukashenko, the President of Belarus. The Prime Minister tweeting that he's glad to have met President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus. And both India and Belarus, he says, are very optimistic about the beneficial opportunities ahead as far as our nations are concerned. Very interesting meeting there.